Cut content from video games has been something that's fascinated me for a while. Seeing everything that developers wanted to put in their games that didn't make it in the end is always so interesting because a lot of the time, the content that was cut shows a lot of promise. Cyberpunk 2077 is no different. The game had a development cycle that was almost an entire decade long, and even then, a ton of stuff was cut from the final release. Some content has been repurposed and added into the game through patches, like the in-game metro system and ability to use weapons and vehicles. But a lot of things that Projekt Red made for the game were changed drastically or just removed altogether and haven't come back. There's no better example of this than the 48-minute long gameplay reveal video that Projekt Red released on YouTube back in 2018. I watched this video in its entirety multiple times, and there's a lot of stuff in this demo that's different. So I thought I'd go through all of it, comparing this demo to the game's current version, that being version 2.3, and noting all the things that were removed from the game's final release and never got added back in through patches. This might end up being a rather long video, so get ready. Well, long by my standards, but you know what I mean. The first thing that's different in this demo is the character customization. The UI is completely different, but a lot of the customization options are pretty much the same. Although, one thing that never made it into the retail game is the ability to customize V's backstory. From what we can see, we're able to choose V's childhood hero, defining life moments, and the reason for why they're in Night City. I'm guessing this was cut because this would have required a lot more voice lines to be recorded to fit the player's choices, and maybe they just didn't have the time or budget to do that. Also, there's an entirely unique attribute that's missing from the game called Constitution. I have no idea what this means or what kind of skills would have been included with this attribute, and unless it would have changed the gameplay in some really cool way, I'm alright with it being absent. Next, we see a fully rendered third-person cutscene. In the final game, there are no cutscenes like this until the very end. Everything is seen from the first person. And I like the first-person angle a lot better than third-person. Seeing everything from V's perspective is just a lot more interesting than just seeing it like in a normal cutscene. And it just increases the immersion, which I love. But it could have led to some funny moments if we were able to see our V in our custom outfits. I bet that would have been pretty funny. Oh, and also, the iconic samurai jacket has an orange collar here instead of a blue one. Now, we can talk about the gameplay. The first thing we can notice is that the heads-up display, or HUD, has an entirely different look to it. It's a lot more red, less blue, more simplistic. The mini-map is in an entirely different place, and the quest objectives are placed at the top right corner of the screen. I really like this HUD, but I also like the one that we currently have. I'm kinda split on this being gone. While I like our current HUD, that we get to use in-game now, I still really like this one. It just has a bit of an edge to it. In this mission, and for the majority of the demo, V isn't using the Unity as their starting pistol, but they're instead using the Lexington pistol. The Lexington here also has an increased rate of fire, making it more accurate to the real-life machine pistols it's based on. When V encounters their first enemy, they enter a scrapped animation where they shoot the scavenger with the Lexington in water, which is probably something I can't show on YouTube without this video getting restricted. Also, expect to see quite a few sensors in the footage I show you. Then, V has to use a reflex booster to use the Koreznikov ability. There are no reflex boosters in the final game, just standard items that heal you. And you're able to use the Koreznikov ability whenever you want if you have the proper implants equipped. During the fight in the scavenger hideout, there's not a lot that's different, other than the fact that the player is given the option to tell Jackie to be the one who carries Sandra Dorset when they arrive to rescue her, as well as a few cut lines of dialogue. And instead of Jackie driving you back to V's apartment afterwards, we just get a cutscene of the two in the elevator, which then leads into a cutscene of V in their apartment 3 days later. When V opens their apartment window, we can see that Night City looks a lot smoother, more gray. I'm guessing that this is just because all the textures for the city's buildings weren't fully completed by this point. Also, there's no mention of the district of Watson being on lockdown, which, in the final game, is done to keep the player from wandering off during the game's first act. We hear a different version of the song Chippin' In by Johnny Silverhand on the radio, a version that actually got released on Spotify and other music apps, so it's not entirely cut content. Plus, it also plays briefly during the first Johnny Silverhand flashback. And the radio host mentions that it's been a full year since Johnny disappeared. This differs greatly from the final game's story, where Johnny Silverhand died over 50 years prior to the events of 2077. It's also never explicitly stated that he died, so maybe he was supposed to reappear later in the story? Maybe even team up with V at some point? I'm not sure. V's jacket also has a mechanic where it provides the player with extra protection and stats. This was in the retail game, but was removed in patch 2.0 due to the mechanic being incredibly broken. Something that didn't make it into the retail game was clothing increasing V's street cred. Street cred in the final game doesn't get increased when you wear certain cosmetics. It never did, and it only goes up when you do side missions and gigs. It's basically a method of tracking how much of the side quests you completed. Don't know how this would have worked, but it's still pretty interesting. When V exits the apartment, we get to see the different lighting and visuals in this version of the game. The bloom is noticeably higher, shadows are a lot darker in some parts, and the lighting overall has a completely different feel to it. I love the final game's visuals, but here it can be even prettier. I'm not sure what made them change the lighting system. Maybe it's because they didn't think it looked as good when they finished all of the textures. Also, when V walks by a virtual ad, it responds to V's presence and directs them to a vending machine. As far as I can tell, this doesn't happen in the retail game at all. And on the virtual billboard of the weapon shop, we can see that some of the weapons have different names. I mean, it's not a huge detail, but it's kind of cool, I guess. The narrator also mentions how V can upgrade their weapons at weapon vendors, but this isn't a feature nowadays. You can only upgrade iconic weapons, which are one-of-a-kind weapons that have unique properties, and you can do that wherever you want. If you want to have a better standard weapon in the game, you either have to buy or find a new one. I really wish this mechanic stayed around so that I could just keep the same weapon instead of constantly having to find new ones whenever I level up. Moving on outside, the size and density of the crowds of people of Night City are noticeably larger, and the NPCs have more variety in their appearances. Jackie isn't waiting for you at a food stall to talk to you about your new job either. He's just waiting by a railing, and instead of talking to you for like 3 or 4 minutes about your new employer, he just tells you that he's waiting for you. He doesn't give you your car either. And in the final game, you go visit Victor's clinic and then go meet Dex or Deshawn, but in this demo, it's the other way around. When V does meet Dex, there isn't any mention of Arasaka, the biochip you aim to steal, the character of Evelyn Parker, or the Quiet Life versus Glaze of Glory, the debate that Dex brings up in the final release. The visuals of the data shard here also look a bit different. Once V gets out of the car and calls the agent from the Militech Corporation, we can see that the characters shown in the windows during phone calls would have backgrounds behind them, as opposed to the real game, where they're just standing in a black void. In Victor's clinic, the dialogue between V and Vic is pretty much the same, but the UI for selecting cyberware is entirely different. Instead of being taken to a separate screen, you're shown a screen on an in-game monitor that V can interact with without having to transition to a separate screen. While this is cool and adds to the game's immersion, I think this would have been pretty slow and clunky to use, especially on consoles. Even though this feature is pretty neat, I'm glad it's not in the game anymore. The abilities given to you by the subdermal grip cyberware are different, slightly increasing the weapon damage instead of unlocking the ability to ricochet projectiles. The scanner that V acquires is also different from the final one visually. In the final game, it's a lot easier to see stuff with the scanner than in this build, so I'm glad they changed it. The scanner also shows the threat level of a character, as well as what kind of damage they're resistant to. The damage resistance info would have been useful, but the threat level thing was pretty much pointless. Instead of going to meet the Militech agent all by yourself, Jackie drives you there in his car. Here, Jackie has a car that V obtains during a side quest in the final game instead of his black and red motorcycle. Also, the scavengers attack V and Jackie on their way to the meetup here instead of immediately after their rescue mission. Once V reaches the meeting point, they also make some comments about the armor SUV that the agent has. These lines are nowhere to be heard in the release version of the game, by the way. The meetup itself goes pretty much the same as it does in the real game, aside from some small differences in dialogue. Same for the meetup with the Maelstrom gang, too. The UI for the player's inventory is a bit different, and there's also an ability to inspect items here. This could have been cool for a bit, but I don't think I would have used it very much. During the fight with Maelstrom, we could see some differences with the weapons. The smart targeting SMG DN fires faster projectiles, and the projectiles don't nearly miss as much as they do in the retail game. V can also wall run, and the Mantis Blade cyberware allows V to stick to the sides of walls. The wall running could have allowed for some really cool parkour tricks, and being able to stick to walls with the Mantis Blades would have been great for stealth gameplay. The quick hacking mechanic is also entirely different from what we see here. Instead of being able to perform quick hacks on an enemy whenever, V has to gain access to the location's network and unlock the ability to perform quick hacks. While this does look really cool, I bet it would have been way too tedious if it were still included. The Achilles tech rifle also has an ammo capacity of 30 to the comparatively small 12 ammo capacity it has now. The boss fight with Royce and the confrontation with the Militech agent afterwards are basically the same as they are in the final game. And that's pretty much everything I noticed that was different in the Cyberpunk gameplay reveal. I really enjoyed looking at all this old footage to see what CD Projekt Red originally had in mind for the game, and I really hope that we get to play this version of the game in some sort of official capacity, like the Earth City mission from Halo 2 that was used in the E3 build in 2003. I know that's probably not going to happen, but I can dream, right? So, what do I think about this build? Visually, and if you play it right, it looks cool, from what I can tell. That's how most demos are. But I bet if you tried to stray away too far, the whole thing would just fall apart. There are some features I really like the wall running, sticking to walls with mantis blades, upgrading standard weapons, a lot of that stuff. And some of the lighting does look really good. But I know that some of the features here were just for show and flair and weren't actually going to be in the game. Like, I don't think that tedious quick hacking mechanic was going to stick around for long. Although, it does show how creative CD Projekt Red is, and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm just really glad that people are supportive of me and my work. Like, I don't do this as like a career, I just do this as a hobby, and just to express my thoughts about things that I enjoy. And I'm so glad that you all liked my Pine Point videos. Yeah. I mean, 2,000 views at the time of recording on my Pine Point Insomniac essay? Like, that's insane. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if I'm going to be making more video essays. I'm leaning towards yes, but we'll just have to see. I have quite a bit of stuff to do in my daily routine, so I haven't really had much time to work on this too often, which is why it's taken so long to come out. But I'll try to do more when I eventually get out of school. So, yeah, look forward to that stuff. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a good day.